Yeah, that was the problem. So picking up,
picking
up.
Yeah, there was the Rashba.
That's right. Very good. Very good. Correct. So picking up where we left off yesterday, that Nosan Huva Amrohi. The Shulchan Aruch paskins like the second lashon in the Gemara, which is Sofek, v'Choshishin. It's a Sofek and Choshishin midrabanon. You with us, Kobe? We're doing Seif. It's Seif Ches. Let's do it again quickly. No. Yes, it is Seif Ches. Sorry. Yeah. Let's do Seif Ches again quickly. Nosan Huva Amrohi. He gave and she said, Im hoyemadabe imalis kiddushin, have a vaday kiddushin. If he was speaking to her about kiddushin, then it's vaday kiddushin. You got the Gemara there?
No.
Awesome, very good. If he was a medabe ima aliske kiddushin, then it's vaday kiddushin. Bimlav, have a sofek kiddushin. So we're passing like the second lashon, that it is a sofek. And then final halacha, v'imona habal hein. If the Baal answers and says hein, b'shas nesina, then it's a vaday kiddushin, even if they weren't oisik b'isa inyan. The last thing we left off with was an understanding of the sugya according to the Rambam. According to the Rambam, the Shittas Rambam is Yodua, as discussed at length at the beginning of Shmaitzer and other places, a very well-known opinion of the Rambam, that Sofek de'oraisa min ha'toira la l'kula. Again. Sofek de'oraisa min ha'toira l'kula. Yeah, you got to. Yeah, I know. Got to process that. Let's break it down. If you have a sofek in a de'oraisa, according to the Rambam, how should you comport yourself? What should you do min ha'toira? You have a sofek de'oraisa. What do you need to do min ha'toira? Says the Rambam, l'kuli, you can be mekel. If you have a sofek de'oraisa, the Rabbanon came along and said sofek de'oraisa l'chumra. So a sofek in a de'oraisa, we have to be machmir, as we saw in the Gemara in Nazir, in Avodah Zarah. What was that Gemara? Avodah Zarah Dav Zayin, right? Isn't that right? That, yes, and other places. That itself is only midrabon. That's Shittas Rambam. The parameters of that is so much discussion. Is that against a chazaka? Is that also true against a roiv? And if you're really interested in all this sort of stuff, you have to learn Shmaitzer. Simple as that. But okay. And then, of course, the main protagonist of the Rambam is the Rashba and others. But the Rashba, that what? Sofek de'oraisa min ha'toira l'chumra. Okay. Now, let us now examine our Gemara. So our Gemara says in the case of Nosan Huva Amrohi, Sveikohi, which would appear to indicate that the Sofek is a Sofek min ha'toira. It is essentially a Sveika de'oraisa, it's Sofek mekudeshes. And if that's the case, then, and the Rashba seems to learn that way, if that's the case, then how come the Gemara says v'choshishin midrabanon? Surely, if it's a sofek de'oraisa, you have to be machmir. If it's the loshon or the it's not the loshon, it's not sanhuva amrohi. If that is a sofek de'oraisa, then surely min ha'torah you'd have to go to chumrah according to the Rashba. How can we say v'choshishin lekiddushin, which seems to be, as the Gemara says, v'choshinon midrabanon? How can that be midrabanon? So that's one of the questions the Achronim deal with. And I want to give you one. I can't remember what I did say yesterday, how far we did get, but I want to give you one possible answer, the way to explain the Rif, which is the same thing. One minute. No, this is, sorry. No, I am confusing myself. This is about Cheskes Pnuya. No, we'll leave that aside. We'll have to leave that aside for the moment. One explanation that I did give you at the end yesterday was that potentially there's a suffix in edus. Because there is a suffix, the suffix edus. Here we need edus l'kiyum hadava, right? They create the chalois. They cannot be made because it's a suffix. There is no edus. There's no edus on a kiddushin because there's only a suffix kiddushin. So, given the fact that there is an integral part of the process, not the suffix that is raised not only by the very situation itself, which is nosan huva omrahi, but there is an additional, I don't know whether you want to look at this necessarily mathematically, but there's an additional component in this very process, which itself is not validated, which is the edus, because the edus is itself on a suffix. So I have no edus. Or maximum I have is edus on a suffix. They can't be made vadai on a kiddushin. If you add that together with the chezkas pnuya, that the woman had a prior state, a status quo of being a pnuya, together with the suffix edus, and that it is a suffix kiddushin, then even those who would hold, possibly, that sveika deiraisa minat Torah l'chumra, the Rashba could still say in this case, really minat Torah. You put all that together, it's enough to say that minat Torah would be mutter, but midrabban and the chazal come along and chayshesh. And that's one approach. There are more, but that suffices for our purposes, I think. Okay? Let's move on. Let's move on. Then we have, the next point that we have here is that he says hain. If he says hain, then it's good. Okay? Okay, I think we actually need to learn the next seif before, and then we need to come back, because we're going to introduce an interesting concept which is going to force us to revisit seif ches. So look, with no further ado, let's move on to seif tes. And the Gemara says as follows. Here's the Gemara. There's a Gemara in Kiddushin Daf Zayin Amud Aleph where the Gemara says as follows: Boi Rava. Heilech mono va'akadesh aniloch mahu. A woman says to a man, here you go. She gives him a mona, and she says, va'akadesh aniloch, and I will become a kodeshes to you. Mahu, what's the halacha? How would you pass in, Rabbi say?
Nothing. Klum.
Correct. I would have said exactly the same. This is basically nosnahi va'omrahi, which the Gemara, we'd already seen. The Gemara says clearly, hey, I'm a base. What the Gemara takes for Pashut, Nosnahi va'omrahi, Einam Kodesh. That's nothing to talk about. So the Gemara has a backwards and forwards to understand. This is in Daf Zayin. We've already dealt with this. So the Gemara has a backwards and forwards to understand what's going on. And it comes up with the following interesting concept, which becomes one of the big sugis in Kiddushin. And we are talking about the following. And in order maybe to explain this to you, I'm going to tell you a quick personal anecdote. And that is, many years ago, my eldest daughter, who, can I know her today, has 6 children of her own already. Many years ago, we were in Gibraltar, and when we were living in Gibraltar, she was this very young, pretty blonde little girl, and I forget actually which of the minor royals, was it Princess Anne or I actually can't even remember. I've got a photo of it somewhere in the family album. Came to visit Gibraltar, and which was a big deal. And she was going to pass by the Hebrew school, as it was called, La Escuela Hebrea, the Talmud Torah, and she was going to be made, there would be a small procession, whatever. And my daughter was chosen to hand the flowers to, I think it was Princess Anne. I don't know. It wasn't the Queen, and it wasn't, whatever. So she got up in her pretty summertime, her pretty Yom Tov dress, I think, and it was a big deal in her life. I have to ask her actually whether she remembers. I haven't spoken about it. Now, so let's stop, and I probably need to hold myself back from going into the hashkafa of it, because Rav Dessler's Kuntras HaChesed would be very useful here when we are determining the notion of giving and taking. Things are not always what they seem from the purposes of the externals. So, on the face of it, my daughter has given Princess Anne a bunch of flowers. Everybody knows who has given and who has received. Princess Anne, I would imagine, has no need for yet another bunch of flowers. who was giving to whom in reality? By taking it, and by my daughter being chosen to be the one to present it, she was as pleased as punch, as we would say. Yeah, she was proud. It was like a big day. She had a photo taken. It was in the paper and whatever. So, 1 second, why? She gave and the Princess Anne took. The answer is, if an Adam Choshuv, to use the terminology in the Gemara, Adam Choshuv, if an Adam Choshuv chooses to receive something from you, then actually he has given to you, not the other way around. So then our definitions of giving and taking can, in certain circumstances, be reversed. Therefore, says the Gemara, this is what's going on. This was Rava's question. Heilech moneh va'akadesh aniloch. When she gives to the man, in the case of Kiddushin, she gives him a moneh. She says, I give you a moneh and I will be mekadesh myself to you. But Adam Choshuv, the man is an Adam Choshuv. Then maybe, the Gemara says, well, as we'll see, it works. Why? And I quote, De bahahi hano'o, de kamakabel matona mino, gomra umiknaya lei nafsha. He has actually given to her. What has he given to her? He has given her the kavod, the pleasure, the benefit. Pleasure, hana. The Gemara calls it hana. The hana that he accepts as something from her, given his status as Adam Choshuv, has a monetary value, and on the basis you can put a price tag on that. Theoretically, you could. I don't know. You could
sell.
You could sell theoretically.
The
you could have.
Of giving
that's right. That's right. Let's say the school would have decided. We have a fundraiser. Theoretically, I don't know. Because we have a fundraiser, and whoever votes the most, pays the most in this auction, will be the one to present the flowers. I'm sure people would have paid a pruta for sure. For sure, it's worth a pruta. That's all you need. You need to give somebody something that has the value of a pruta. And it's definitely the hana is worth a pruta. So even though the physical act of giving and taking is, the externals is reversed, but actually, in that hana that he accepts from her, gomra umiknaya lei nafsha, she is prepared to be makne herself to him by the receipt of that hana, which is worth a pruta. That's it. That's the Gemara. And this is the basis and the background for our next seif, which is going to force us to revisit Sif Ches. Let's do it inside. Sif Tes. Nosno he, she gives. Va'omrolai, and she says to him, Heilech dinar ze matona. She speaks to him and she says, take this dinar as a matona, ve'eskadesh loch. And, in exchange, I will be mekadesh myself to you. I will be prepared to be mekudeshes to you. V'lochoi, v'omar lo. Hariat mekudeshes li b'hano ozu shekibalti mimech matona. So here we add another, and this is something we're going to have to see whether it is a condition. Is it a deal breaker? What happens if he says nothing? We'll have to see. Yeah, but in this, so says the Shulchan Aruch, the Adam Choshev receives from her, and he spells it out, and he says, "And Harei at mekudeshes li b'hano ozu shekibalti matona." Im Adam Choshev hu harizu mekudeshes. Shehano yesh lo behiyosa nehne mimenu ubahano zu hiknasa atzmaloi. There is a price tag. There is a value, a monetary value on this pleasure. It's more than a pruta, and on the basis of that pruta, we absolutely accept a woman would be prepared to be makna herself. V'tzorich chakiras chacham, says the Shulchan Aruch. It needs a chakiras chacham mi nikra adam she'enoi choshuv lahatira b'lei get. Who would be considered an Adam she'enoi choshuv to allow her the hatira beloy get? What an interesting way of phrasing it. I'll say that again. Says the Shulchan Aruch. Yeah, you are frowning. Quite right. It's an interesting way of phrasing it. We need a chakiras chacham. We would have to have a kavod panel, I don't know what you'd call it, to work out who is not an Adam choshuv if we want to just allow her l'shuk without a get. What does that sound like to you? What does that sound like to you? Anybody?
So if he's not an Adam Choshev,
yes, then there's no get. If he's not an Adam Choshev, then it doesn't work.
Yes.
Well, we know that, but I'm asking about the Okay, I'll give it to you. Go on.
You have to determine it's worth a pruta to have the honor to give to him. The panel determines if it's worth a pruta.
I was looking for something a bit more subtle, I think. Ask yourself the following question, what is the default position? That's the diuk over here. What would be the default position?
Well, I think Adam Chashuv is usually in the Gemara not the default position.
Nice! I like that.
So
when Gemara, whoa! I want 1 more second. Give me a chance. I want to big you up. Give me a.
In Avedas, Adam Chashuv is also like
the lashon that we often have in the Gemara is Adam Chashuv Shani.
Different.
Or Shani, so and so. He's an Adam Chashuv. In many different contexts, many Gemaras where we talk about different things and we say, oh, that's different. He's an Adam Chashuv. So, by definition, it's almost as if Adam Chashuv is not the random or standard or default representation of the average person in the population. Yeah? For the purposes of Allah, Adam Chashuv Shani, so and so, oh, that's different. He's an Adam Chashuv. Now, that now becomes a question. Because then surely it should have been phrased the other way around. So we need a Chakiras Chacham to work out who is an Adam Chashuv, if that's not the default. Now look at the Lashon of the Shulchan Aruch. That's the question. V'tzarich Chakiras Chacham, mi nikra Adam she'enoi Chashuv lahatira b'lo get. It's almost as if the default is, and maybe this is the answer, we'll see, because we're talking about an important thing, Chumra De'ishes Ish, to be matter a woman, when you have a process that might be good, you've got to be very, very certain that this is definitely no good if you're going to be matter her without a get. Because, and that's probably the answer to your question, we'll see. Because even though, generally speaking, we say the average person is not an Adam Chashuv, but if there's a Sophic, maybe he has some chashivas, and maybe in her mind, remember, it's not a lot of money we're talking about. We only need a hana of a pruta. So pretty much anybody, and maybe she sees him as, I presume, if you, here's another thing. Let's just delve into the psychology for 1 second. How shall I put this? There's a bit of maybe it is worthwhile mentioning. There's an interesting idea in psychology, isn't there? Let's talk about good, healthy spousal relationships. Which let's hope that those are the majority. If we now have an interesting, almost a contradiction from a psychological perspective for a baseline assessment, and that is, on the one hand, we have the default or the assumption is that the average person is not an Adam Chashuv. I think, on the other hand, we should say that the average person is an Adam Chashuv, because the majority of, let's say, the people that are married in the world, one would certainly hope that to their wives, that person is an Adam Chashuv. Because by definition, they chose to hitch their cart to him, for the rest of their lives. And this is somebody who they love, trust, respect. We're talking about, yeah? So that means she's willing. Remember, the problem is she goes up to him and says, these are the facts that present themselves to us. We're talking about a woman who goes up to a guy and says, she chose, nobody forced her, Heilech mono zeh, Heilech dina zeh matono, ve'es kadesh loch. So you're on a pretty good wicket already, as we would say in England. Meaning, she obviously likes this guy. She thinks he's great. So much so that she's doing the proposing. Yeah? She's not leaving anything to chance. Propose to me already. This silly guy doesn't get the hint. All right, I'll do it. She thinks he's awesome. So it would be, but there's a problem. The problem is that's not the way it's meant to work. We have to be absolutely certain that he has given her a pruta and she has been prepared to be making herself. So in fact, I think maybe that's a sensible way of saying in this particular scenario, the shoe is on the other foot. Okay? And therefore, you understand my answer. And therefore, if we can determine who is not an Adam Chashuv, the default is that he's an Adam Chashuv, and she's going to need a get me sophic at the very least. That's going to be the default for all of these reasons. to be certain, to be matter without a get, you're going to have a whole panel and say this guy's a scoundrel. There's no way she could have thought he's an Adam Choshev.
No,
Yes.
I disagree. It could be that she's mamish convinced, yes, that he's an Adam Choshev. I will give you an example. And the Hana is worth a proof.
But it's an objective standard. Is that what you're going to say? But
So I'll give you an example. There is a player guy who's super cool, yes, and all the girls want to have him, yes, and she tells, like, take me as your bride, yes, and it'll be such an honor, yes, I'll give, if you accept this from me,
Right.
and all the girls are like, wow, if she accepts this, like,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yes, and he says, yeah, I'll give her the honor of giving me the dinner, yes, but he's not interested in Kiddushin, yes.
Rega, sorry, I'm sorry I have to stop you there. You've forgotten something. What have you forgotten?
She says.
No, you've forgotten that he says. Va'omar lo, the Shulchan Aruch adds, Harei at mekudeshes li bahano ozu shekibalti mimoch matona. So you were doing so well. You really were doing well, and I think there is maybe something, if I can modify slightly maybe what you were saying, it could be that the concept of an Odom Choshev, I think it's unquestionably she thinks he's a cool cucumber. She thinks he's great and she wants to marry him. So, but at the same time, she might, there are women who get married to men and they don't necessarily think this guy is an Odom Choshev as such. She's level-headed. She just says, he's the guy for me. He does it for me. He ticks my boxes. He's the guy that I want to be as my soulmate. But she's not necessarily doesn't have to be starry-eyed romantic delusion. It doesn't have to be, Hollywood doesn't have to have its way. It doesn't have to be that. It could be I've known many couples, and in a way, it's actually much healthier. Where, in a way, it's much healthier. It's saying, look, I think you're awesome. You're a great guy. And I think together we can grow and help each other grow in Avodas Hashem and raising a good family. I know you're not perfect. You know I'm not perfect. But we get on really well together. We do click. It works at many, many different levels. But she doesn't necessarily have to think he's an Odom Choshev. It doesn't have to be. So there is a certain area of doubt. And therefore it could be, to some extent, she can accept Kiddushin from him, but we don't know whether that's going to be worth a pruta. So we need to have some sort of objective, because again, we need to have eidos. So we need to have some sort of objective analysis, some sort of yardstick which stands up on its own. We have to have objective standards. Because the minute you're into the world of how people value other people, it is by definition subjective and internal, and that's the reality. And therefore, he needs to say that, and we need, therefore, the shoes on the other foot. There's a suffix, maybe it's Adam Choshev. And therefore you need to be, and if you want to be matter this woman without a get, you're going to be, the onus is on you to prove that he's not an Adam Choshev. Okay? Let's just finish off this, Steve. V'yesh, says the Ramah, V'yesh machmirin afilu omra tchila kashenosna ve'eskadesh loch rak nosna stam v'omalo hiskad shali v'shoska. Now, there are those who are machmir, even if she did not say anything when she gave it to him. So until now, what was the scenario? The scenario was, there's 3 stages. This is what the Shulchan Aruch is talking about. She comes up to him, says to him, Hareini, what's the Lashon? Heilech din zeh matona ve'eskadesh loch. He receives it, and then he says to her, Harei at mekudeshes li. I've just had a thought. Sorry. We now got the reverse order, haven't we? Because the giving to her was the taking, was him taking, and now that's in a reverse order because his statement of Kiddushin is now, it's like putting on the ring and then saying, Harriet, I don't know why that's only just occurred to me now. Just park that thought, we'll come back to it. But the Ramah is now saying that maybe this would work. There are those that are machmir, even if you miss out stage 1. Miss out stage 1, she just goes up to him, gives him a dinner, says nothing, gives it to him, he accepts it, and then he says to her, Harei at mekudeshes li, with the hana that I took this from you. So in other words, we don't even know that she gave it to him for Kiddushin. She walks up to a guy and gives him a dinner. And by the way, it's interesting that I see some of them unfortunately explain, why do you say a dinner, why not shava pruta, why dafka dinner, whatever. She goes up to him and gives him something. He turns around and says to her, Harei at mekudeshes li with the hana that I took this from you. V'shoska, what's the lashon of the v'shoska? And she smiles. I don't. It doesn't say she smiles. She's quiet. In other words, indicating shtika kohidah. Says the Ramah yesh machmirim, to say that that's also kiddushin. So it doesn't. Now this is really getting interesting, really getting quite complicated. Yeah.
It's not so far. It's not such a big step because, anyways, everything which she says is halachically usually we don't care about it. Everything what she says.
She does not do the amira in kiddushin.
Yeah. Everything she said, if we miss it out the first part, or she does say it, is usually not a big difference anyway.
Okay. Let's.
It doesn't. I don't see how much better does it do it if she beforehand says something.
Well, it establishes context. That's what it does. It definitely establishes context. It may not be a proper amira of kiddushin that I can hear,
okay.
but it definitely establishes what's going on over here. So, a couple of points over here. Let's keep it simple because I want to actually finish the Siman. Pischei Tshuva says, the Pischei Tshuva over here brings a note. It says from the Tiv Kiddushin. The Shulchan Aruch says Helach Dinar. It could be that this only works with a Dover Choshuv. It could be a Shava Pruta won't work in this case. Could be, and that's why it says dinar. A dinar, it seems, was a schum chashuv. And says the Tiv Kiddushin, that's why the Shulchan Aruch says a dinar, because it could be if you only give a pruta, then you're not going to have necessarily, certainly, the hana, because remember, we're not looking at the value of the item. We're looking at the hana. We're looking at the value of the hana. If she just gives him a pruta, then it could be that the hana of accepting something which is only a pruta is itself not worth a pruta. What's going to be the scale? And suggests the Tiv Kiddushin, that's why the Shulchan Aruch says dinner. Okay? Now, on the default position, the Chelkas Mechoykek and the Beis Shmuel say, Miloshen ze mashma, that stam ben odam hu choshev. Yeah? As we inferred from the Shulchan Aruch. The implication is that a stam person is choshev, and therefore needs a get misofek, unless a chacham needs a chakiras chacham can say this guy is definitely not an odam choshev. There is, however, a Tshuvas Rashba who says stam ben odam einay choshev, and so that's a bit of a machlokes. Okay. Now, does she need to say anything at all? We saw the Ramah, and the Beis Shmuel says most poskim agree with the Ramah. Most poskim agree with the Ramah. And now, what would be with nosnahi va'omar hu ba'odam she'enei chashuv? She gives and he says, but with an Adam She'ena Choshev, do we say it's definitely no good? So the Bahag holds it's still a Sofik Kiddushin. Most Rishonim hold that it's not a Kiddush. It's not Kiddushin at all.
There's no Shava Puta involved at all.
That's the shayla is whether we say there's a Sofik. Is it a Sofik at all?
But if there's no giving or taking place halachically, I mean,
well, that's the shayla. If he's an Adam She'ena Choshev,
it's not with a pruta, and that's the same case where you don't give something what's.
So the Bahag says that it's the same as Nosan Hu va'omrahi. What do we say by Nosan Hu va'omrahi? That's why we want to go back to Sif Ches. Yeah, Nosan Hu va'omrahi.
If she gives,
no, Nosan Hu va'omrahi. What would that be? The halacha be there by an Adam Choshev. That's what I want to go back and see. The Achronim talk about the possibility, can we have possibly even a situation when she gives and she says, and he is makabel b'shtika. Okay, new case. Putting Sif Ches and Sif Tes together, let's ask the following shayla. What would be if she gives and she says, and he keeps quiet, but he's an Adam Choshev? What do you think?
He cannot even make an action which would be.
He doesn't absolutely nothing.
Right, so he cannot even have the option of giving her the hana'ah for the transaction, for like the.
Well, maybe he has.
No,
by accepting. Nosna, again, she gave, she said.
She gives
he has
flowers.
done. He has accepted.
But he cannot say it.
What do you mean he can't say? I'm giving you a case. The case is, she gives, she says, he accepts and says nothing. But he is an Adam Choshev. We have established that an Adam Choshev accepting is Shava Pruta for the purposes of Kiddushin. Therefore, we have a very good shaila. The only problem is, perhaps, that maybe there's a lack of context. Well, she said what it's for. She goes up to him and she says, "1 minute. 1 minute. So the Ramah, I got confused for a second. Our Ramah here is when she doesn't say anything. It's when he says, Hiskadshi, and she's quiet. This is the other way around. And this is what the Achronim discuss. Nosnohi va'omrohi. She gives, she says, he does nothing other than accept. But he's an Adam Choshev. Now, what were you going to say, Gabi?
I would say it's nothing.
Because
there is, as far as I understood, there has to be at least one action which he can make the reshut change.
you're gonna have to speak more clearly.
Because before that, I noticed we talked about that he, through her giving him a dinar, for example, he can have a act of giving her hana'ah.
No, the other way around. The other way around. He is the Adam Choshev and she gives to him.
Right.
She gives to him.
And he gives back her hana'ah that he receives.
In this case also.
Right.
In this case also.
Okay, I just wonder if the shtika is fulfilling that.
You accept the flowers.
We've already established that accepting, as long as we need to know what's going on, that this isn't a gift.
But he can just accept, or he can accept for the sake of giving her something back.
So
I'm not clear what you're saying. We've already established that if an Adam Choshev receives, that is, and we can establish, however we do so, we can establish that it is within the context of Kiddushin, then the Hana of receiving, of the Hana of an Adam Choshev receiving has a monetary value which is valid for the purposes of Kiddushin.
Even without saying anything.
We only need to say insofar as to establish context. Okay, you came a little bit in the middle, so I think I'm not sure you...
Okay.
But so, what do we think? Nosnahiv Amrahi. Kobe, what do you think? What are your thoughts? Nosnahiv Amrahi, but he's an Adam Choshev.
I think, according to the Chafetz Chaim, it's Eino Klum because he didn't make a dibur. But according to the Rashba, it's a Sofek Kiddushin because we don't know what the Eidim, because he doesn't say anything. They're maybe not sure what they're Eidim on, because did he really want to have this Kiddushin? And therefore also the Baal Hamor and the Toys.
Can I start? Okay, very good, very good.
Yeah.
That's really good what you're doing. You're piecing it all together, which is great.
So if she is accepting B'shtika, yes.
Yeah, but she speaks.
She speaks.
She says, please, Heiloch dinner zeh, b'matona ve'eskadish ani loch. Right? So, yes, there's no dibur as such. He hasn't done any dibur. So you might have a problem according to the Torah's Gittin and the Bir Alocha. That is true. You may have a problem there.
But according to the Rashba's Shita, yes, I mean, what the Eidim are witnessing is that both are consenting, yes.
And it's definitely Kiddushin, and there is a Pruta has transferred.
Yes, but I'm not sure that all the cases before in the Gemara was that he's answering something back. Yes, all the cases before, even on the Hey Ahmad base, he said Cain, or he said he's there.
Well, that was the Ramah. The Ramah added that in the Ramah at the end.
Yeah. So basically, even in the Hey Ahmad base, where with the case where she says, so we had, and also in our later case where he's saying, I'm Mekadosh you with the, like after she gave, he says, I'm Mekadosh you with the, he's clarifying the thing. We have something from the man, and he kind of, the Adam witnessing him agreeing. Yes.
Okay, I think I know where you're going, and
So I mean, maybe according to Bahamon, the Toysvus, yes, we could say it's maybe Vada a Kiddushin because we're ruling out that there's not a gift of affection. That because she's clarifying very clearly, it's not like I love you, here the flowers, but she says because of Kiddushin, I'm trying to really make a Kiddushin here. Yes, we can say that's the only thing we have to do is to go away the thing of affection. Therefore, everything can be anyways done b'shtika. We don't
Okay.
need any words at all.
so yeah, okay, I like your thinking. Let's see what the poskim say. So the Hilchos Kiddushin, I'll give you the Maramakomis. The Hilchos Kiddushin in Sivkot and Chof Beis says, in this case, she does the Amira and the Nesina, and he's an Adam Choshev and he's Makabel B'shtika. It's a Sofek Kiddushin exactly the same as Nosan Huva Omrahi. Sofek Kiddushin. Remember, Nosan Huva Omrahi is a Sofek Kiddushin if they were Asukim Ba'isa Inyan. So replace Asukim Ba'isa Inyan with Adam Choshev, and you're back to Seif Ches, which is Sofek Kiddushin. Now let's learn a Be'er Heitev. The Prisha also says the same thing. Let's do Be'er Heitev, Sivkoten Chof Dalad. Says the Be'er Heitev. Let's learn it together. So small, I can't see a thing. Yeah, you with me? Be'er Heitev, Sivkoten Chof Dalad. One minute. No, I think that's the wrong Maramokam. Sorry. One minute. It's the wrong. The wrong one is printed. I'm looking for the Prisha. Rega. Oh. One minute. Sorry. Okay, name I feel possible to Nami. No. I'm Sefer Makna. Oh. Sorry. I relied on this. I can't find it now. I relied on this, on this, and quoted the Be'er Heitev, who says that even if he's an Adam Choshev, it's not going to work. Because the posuk is mashma, he needs to be Mekadosh her, not that she's Mekadosh herself. You got it? Which one is it? Chof Hei. Rega. I'm looking in the Pischei Tshuva. I'm sorry, I'm overtired. I do apologize. It is Chof Dalad. No, it isn't. It's Chof Hei. I do apologize. I'm so sorry. I was looking in the wrong place. I was looking at the Pischei Tshuva. Says it's the Be'er Heitev is Chof Hei. Says the Be'er Heitev. And this is on Siv Zayin, right? Nosan Huva Amrahi. Says the Be'er Heitev. Afilu I have a Adam Choshev Eino Mekudeshes. Sorry? You've got it as Chav Dalet?
Yeah. I got it.
That is weird. Mine's Chof Hei. Okay. So there's different Defusim, right? So there are different versions. Okay. That's weird, but okay. So the it starts with the words V'omra. Yes, it's on Siv Zayin. Afilu I have Adam Choshev Eino Mekudeshes. Sha'kosav mashma shehu yikadesh yisor v'lo yihiyas atzma. The pasuk, we see in the pasuk that he needs to be Mekadosh her, not that she is Mekadosh herself.
Right.
Okay? And therefore, he paskins that it's not going to work. According to the Hilchos Kiddushin, it's a suffix. According to the Be'er Heitev, who's actually quoting the Prisha, it's no good. One more point. Let's aggregate. Can we aggregate these two things? What would be with, remember we said, Nosan Huva Amrahi is a suffix Kiddushin if they were Asukim Ba'isa Inyan. What would be Nosan Hu Va'amrahi, Asukim Ba'isa Inyan, and he's an Adam Choshev. Add that as a side order to your menu of Kiddushin. So it's Nosan Hu Va'amrahi, Asukim Ba'isa Inyan, and he's an Adam Choshev. Says the Beis Shmuel, Sivkot Chaf Aleph, Vadai Kiddushin, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. Okay? And we will very quickly learn the last seif in the Siman, just to finish it off. Sif Yud, Shir HaKesef Shemekadshin Boy Mishkal Chatzi Sa'oira Kesef Tzorov. The Gemara says that a pruta is a Chatzi Sa'oira of Kesef. Ein B'Yeridea, Rish Tali Dalad. What is the Shir of a pruta? And if you remember, I did it in the middle. I discussed with you whether it is the Sma and the other Achronim, whether it is Kesef or whether it is Momoin, and whether nowadays you can actually use something which is not, or you can't buy anything with it, it's not a chosh of amount, 20 cents or whatever it was, and whether that still holds true. And with that, we've basically finished this. Much more to say, but we finished this Siman, and I have to decide whether we do a short test now on Chavav and Chav Zayin, or we wait, but Chav Ches is quite long. So I think we're going to